first man, first senator, first major politician. Let me tell you, he is highly respected in Washington because he's as smart as you get. Senator Jeff Sessions. Great man. Another great man. Very tough competitor. He was not easy. He was not easy. Who was that? Is that the mayor that showed up? Rudy? Oh, Rudy got up here. Another great man who has been really a friend to me. But I'll tell you, I got to know him as a competitor because he was one of the folks that was negotiating to go against those Democrats. Dr. Ben Carson. Where's Ben? Where's Ben? And by the way, Mike Huckabee is here someplace, and he is Mike and his family, Sarah. Thank you very much. General Mike Flynn. Where is Mike? And General Kellogg. We have over 200 generals and admirals that have endorsed our campaign. And they're special people, and it's really an honor. We have 22 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. We have just tremendous people. A very special person who believed me, and I'd read reports that I wasn't getting along with him. I never had a bad second with him. He's an unbelievable star. He is, that's right, how did you possibly guess? So let me tell you about Reince. And I've said this. I said Reince, and I know it. I know it. Look at all those people over there. I know it. Reince is a superstar. But I said, they can't call you a superstar, Reince, unless we win. Because you can't be called a superstar like Secretariat. If Secretariat came in second, Secretariat would not have that big, beautiful bronze bus at the track at Belmont. But I'll tell you, Reince is really a star. And he is the hardest working guy. And in a certain way, I did this. Reince, come up here. Where is Reince? Get up here. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's about time you did this, Reince. Oh my God. Say a few words. Say something.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next president of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you. It's been an honor. God bless. Thank God.
Amazing guy. Our partnership with the RNC is so important to the success of what we've done. So I also have to say I've gotten to know some incredible people, the Secret Service people. They're tough, and they're smart, and they're sharp, and I don't want to mess around with them, I can tell you. And when I want to go and wave to a big group of people, and they rip me down and put me back down in the seat, but they are fantastic people, so I want to thank the Secret Service. And law enforcement in New York City, they're here tonight. These are spectacular people, sometimes underappreciated, unfortunately, but we appreciate them. We know what they go through. So, it's been what they call a historic event. But to be really historic, we have to do a great job. And I promise you that I will not let you down. We will do a great job. We will do a great job. I look very much forward to being your president. And hopefully at the end of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or maybe even 8 years, you will say, so many of you worked so hard for us, but you will say that that was something that you really were very proud to do, and I can thank you very much. And I can only say that while the campaign is over, our work on this movement is now really just beginning. We're going to get to work immediately for the American people. And we're going to be doing a job that hopefully you'll be so proud of your president. You'll be so proud. Again, it's my honor. It was an amazing evening. It's been an amazing 2-year period. And I love this country. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Mike Pence. Thank you.
That was Donald Trump speaking last hour from New York City. I'm Corva Coleman at NPR, and my colleague Ray Suarez is at member station KQED. He was on the air when Donald Trump delivered that speech. Ray, what were your impressions?
Well, it was a warm and conciliatory Donald Trump, quite different from the more combative model that we heard on the campaign trail. And as in a lot of acceptance speeches, he made some very big promises. He wants to double the growth rate of the United States, create millions of jobs, bring a divided country together, and do nothing less than renew the American dream. Those are some pretty tall orders, but he was clearly feeling his oats and gracious in victory, you'd have to say.
Well, Ray, let's listen back to some analysis from NPR's coverage earlier this evening. Our colleagues Ari Shapiro and Rachel Martin spoke with some of the NPR politics team about tonight's surprising victory by Donald Trump. Ari and Rachel were joined by NPR's Asma Khalid, Ron Elving, Ilsa Chang, and Susan Davis. And here's some of that conversation from earlier in the evening.
Let's talk about some of the key takeaways. And I guess one of the key takeaways is that the polls were very, very wrong. Leading up to the election, Hillary Clinton led in nearly every swing state. She led in nearly every national poll. And yet, Asma Khalid, we don't know why the polls were wrong, but can you offer some possibilities?
That's right. And I mean, look, I think there's a couple of key possibilities that I should say we don't know, and we likely will not know the answer until some of the pollsters themselves have a sort of autopsy to figure out what happened and what went on. But one theory is that some of the people who were called just weren't honest with the pollsters themselves. And I say that partly, I mean, if we look at one key demographic that looked like it was going to go for Hillary Clinton, are white college-educated voters. This was a group that had consistently been trending more towards Hillary Clinton in the national exit polls we have so far. Again, I'm relying on a poll, the national exit polls. It looks like Donald Trump won this group by about 4 percentage points. So that's one theory.
This is actually something that Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager, said on the air, was that people might have been embarrassed to admit they were voting for Trump.
Yeah, and it's a possibility. I mean, look, the other possibility is that maybe even within the modeling itself, it didn't account for what the electorate would look like. We may actually just have a larger percentage of white working class voters who participated today.
So just to be clear, pollsters actually adjust. They might get a group of 100 people that includes 60 white people, but if white people they think will actually be 55% of the voting population, they'll de-emphasize the weight of that group.
And they weight, say Latinos to be X percentage and whatnot. So it just could be that, that there was not the correct modeling. And then the other theory is just that, within the sort of plethora of polling is that, there was sort of a herd mentality and no one pollster wanted to be the outlier.
Ron Elving, Hillary Clinton's campaign was banking on the fact that they thought they were going to get college-educated Americans, but in particular, white women with college degrees.
Overall, college-educated people voted for Hillary Clinton by a small margin. But if you take away from that group all the people of color who have college degrees, and you leave just the white people, women still voted very narrowly, I think 51% as a majority, for Hillary Clinton. But the men were another story. The men were voting for Donald Trump. Now, is it possible that because so much was said characterizing the Donald Trump vote as coming from people without college degrees, people who were, quote, blue collar, people who were disaffected, is it possible that people talking to pollsters, possibly even exit pollsters, did not want to be so characterized because they thought of themselves as another class, a college-educated, more affluent class, and so they didn't own up to their intention to vote for Donald Trump? Or did they just somewhere along the line change their mind? Or does it have something to do with the gender of the Democratic candidate?
We're going to go now to NPR's Ilsa Chang, who is in Nevada at the Democratic Party event there, the Aria Hotel. One of the bright bright spots for Democrats on a night that doesn't have too many of them, Elsa.
It's been a weird mood in this room. There's been a lot of cheering because of the results for Clinton and for Catherine Cortez Masto, but there's a lot of nerves in this room right now.
This has been something of a Republican wave night to the surprise of many people, but it was supposed to be a year when the map favored Senate Democrats. If the Democrats were ever going to take back the Senate, this was the year to do it. What went wrong?
Well, I'm talking to the voters here. There's a lot of blame for the Clinton, the letter from James Comey, the FBI director.
They blame
a lot
the
of people
FBI
are talking about tonight, yes, that last minute sort of supposed reopening of the investigation into the Clinton emails, and then a never mind last minute letter saying, you know, it wasn't the case that those emails were relevant or in any way determinative or dispositive. A lot of people here are laying blame for that. I've also heard a lot of people blame us in the media that we didn't do a good enough job of vetting Trump at the beginning, and that's kind of what's happened. He's gained a lot of momentum early on that he never lost throughout this entire election. There's a lot of anger in this room, actually, at the press here tonight in the Democratic headquarters.
All right, and here's Elsa Chang speaking with us from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thanks, Elsa.
You're welcome.
Ron Elving, you know, something I'm still confused about. We have a lot of questions, but this is one that's on my mind right now. What about these Republicans who were so skittish about aligning themselves with Trump? Was that unnecessary? I mean, did they win because of him, despite him?
There are a great number of Republican intellectuals, people like George Will, who actually changed his party registration to leave the Republican Party, but a lot of other writers, a lot of other people who have published over the years, many of the major Republican or conservative news organs, and particularly magazines of opinion, separated themselves from Donald Trump almost immediately, were against him all the way through, did not endorse him in the fall, but the dynamic of this race was that Donald Trump emerged in a huge field of candidates, 17 candidates, with maybe a third to 40% of the Republican vote, but outlasted all of his other rivals. And once he did that, then he piled up a lot more of the vote in the late primaries, emerged at the convention completely unchallengeable, because at that point he had about half the delegates in his corner, and he was clearly the only option. And after that, once he was the Republican nominee, he was to some degree normalized. He became another Republican nominee. And while a lot of the conservative intellectuals didn't like that or rejected that, and much of the Republican establishment, including many senators, rejected him, something like a fifth to a fourth of all Republican office holders nationwide actively separated themselves from him. Very unusual behavior for Republicans. But by and large, the Republican electorate, people who ever vote Republican, came around and said, well, on the other hand, if we have Donald Trump, we have the White House, the Senate, we have the House, we have the key vote on the Supreme Court to keep a conservative majority there, that's not such a bad world in comparison with having Hillary Clinton. So they voted for the Republican nominee, love him or not.
Ron, we know what a typical Republican administration in waiting might look like. Donald Trump is not a typical Republican. What would we imagine a Trump cabinet to possibly look like?
There have been a lot of theories already advanced that the people who have been his surrogates, and he has not had a large cast of surrogates by any means.
Talking about Jeff Sessions, Chris Christie, Rudy Giuliani.
That's right. Now, Chris Christie has some legal problems of his own going back to Bridgegate. Some of his associates have been found guilty in a trial in New Jersey, so he may be a little problematic, but he has been the person in charge of the transition team for the Trump campaign. And not a lot of people were paying a lot of attention to that transition team, but they will be tomorrow. And Rudy Giuliani is certainly a very strong prospect to be Attorney General or something of that nature. We have heard Newt Gingrich's name mentioned to have a cabinet position in the top level of cabinet positions. And some of the other people who have been involved, Jeff Sessions, the senator, and possibly also Kellyanne Conway, the campaign manager, perhaps Steve Bannon, some of the other people who have been powerful, the CEO of his campaign, Steve Bannon, the publisher of Breitbart.com, might have a cabinet level role.
Now, Breitbart is an organization that has trafficked in the kinds of conspiracy theories and outright falsehoods that were once sort of relegated to the fringes. And through Donald Trump, a lot of those sort of conspiracy theories and falsehoods entered the mainstream. Does that become I don't know, U.S. administration policy.
At least it becomes, in a sense, mainstream, does it not? I mean, if the media organizations that did support Donald Trump have supported the man who will now be president, if that is the case, then are they then not, in some sense, mainstream organs of the media? When people talk about the media doing their job or not doing their job, the first question to ask is, which media are you talking about? It's a much more varied cast than it used to be, or than most people realize.
What would Trump's first 100 days look like? Because he's quick with a good quip and has got really strong rhetoric. There hasn't been a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to policies. And before I get your answer, Sue, Dave, did you want to respond to that, Sue?
I just had a thought on that, because one thing that I've been thinking about throughout the course of this night too is two of the bets that Donald Trump made was that the white vote would turn out for him and that traditional Republicans would come home. And I think we've seen that traditional Republicans did come home. And one of the things that I heard